Hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing graphing linear equations using a table. This is going to be part 2 though, because our equations are not going to be in y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form for us. We are going to have to manipulate them, so in order to get them into y equals mx plus b. So how to use a table to graph, part 2. So your first step, you're going to get the y by itself in the equation so that we could put it in slope-intercept form. So we want our equations to look something like this, y equals mx plus b, because that's just a lot easier to graph. And then our second step we're going to do is to make a table of values using strategic numbers you choose, which I'll talk about that in a second. And then you're going to plot the points on the graph and connect the points with a straight line. Please be sure that you guys are actually connecting your points and don't just have dots. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first example, so we see that our equation is not in y equals mx plus b form. We actually need to now solve for that. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do our, back up. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and get y by itself. I need to get rid of the addition and subtraction first. So this is a negative 1/2, so I'm now going to add 1/2 x to both sides. And then once I add it to both sides, meaning both sides of that line right there, or even the equation sign, you are adding 1/2 x, which means that these will cancel, and we're left with y equals, this 1/2 x does not get to get combined with that one because it does not have an x, so we just rewrite this in our slope-intercept form, which is our y equals mx plus b, and we see that the x comes first, so I'm going to write the 1/2 x and then plus 1. Okay, so that's what I'm going to enter right here. I have 1/2 x plus 1, and so that's going to be what I'm going to be plugging in these values for. So what I meant by strategic values for x, this is a fraction, so I'm going to, whatever the bottom number is, this bottom number right here, I'm going to make multiples of that value. So it could be negative or positive. So I'm going to show you guys where we could both do negative and positive. So I'm going to do negative 2. 0 is going to be nice because it will make that fraction 0. And then 2. You guys could do negative 4, 4, negative 6, positive 6, negative 8, 8. Of course, just multiples and more multiples. So what we're going to do now by plugging in these numbers, we are now going to plug them in for this x. So make sure you have some room to show this work. So I'm just going to write it here. 1/2 times negative 2 plus 1. And I'm going to do my work down here below, so I'm making sure I'm showing my teacher, when you guys go to do this, that I know what I'm actually doing. So we're plugging in negative 2. Let's just put that in parentheses over here so then we know what we're actually working with. And then we're going to add 1. In order to make this negative 2 a fraction, you put it over 1. So when we multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So we get 1 times negative 2 on the top, and it's a negative 2. 2 times 1 is 2, and then plus 1. Well, let's go ahead and simplify that fraction first. Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1. Then we're going to add 1, and we actually end up getting 0. So we're going to plug in 0 for our y. Now we are going to make our next equation. So now this time we're going to use the point 0 for x. So now I'm going to rewrite 1/2 times 0 plus 1, and these are all y equals, you guys. This is where that y equaled. And then this is y equals. So we have our 1/2 times 0, so y equals 0 plus 1, and then y equals 1. So now we're going to do 1 there. Just going to rewrite this in my notes, just so I know that I was able to plug in the 0. Then we are going to plug in 2 for our next number, and that's going to be y equals 1/2 times 2 plus 1. So now I have to make this a fraction by putting it over 1. We're going to multiply straight across. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. We're going to go ahead and simplify 2 divided by 2, which equals 1 plus 1, and we get y to equal 2. So that's my answer here. Again, I'm going to write 1/2 times 2 plus 1. So I know that I did the work there. Okay, so now the thing that we are interested in is actually grabbing the x's and the y's. So see how our point is x's and y's? So now we're going to go ahead and grab the x and the y values, and we're going to write them as points. So when we go get the x and y values, we're going to see that we have -2, comma 0. Our next one is 0, comma 1. Our next one is 2, comma 2. So now we have found 3 of our points here. So now I'm going to plot these on our graph. So if I have -2, I'm going to go -2 on the x-axis. And then, sorry, you're not going to make a point there, but I'm going to go -2, and actually I am going to make a point there because I didn't go up at 0. I didn't go up anywhere on my y-axis. My next point is 0. I didn't go anywhere on my x-axis, and now I'm going up 1. Now my next point is 2 to the right, up 2 on the y-axis. And hopefully your guys' points are making a line, and you make sure that you connect your points. That was our last step to make sure we're connecting our dots. Please do not leave the dots. Make sure there's a line connecting those. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go on to our next example here. And so now, again, we have to get y by itself. Again, we want the y equals mx plus b form. That's what we're looking for. So this has 3 times y. So in order to get rid of multiplication, we need to divide both sides by 3. So these divide out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times y is y. This is going to be left as a fraction. This is actually 1/3 x. And then since we have the larger number on top, it's going to stay as a whole number. Since we had the larger number on the bottom there, it was a fraction. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, and we had a negative divided by a positive, which gives us a negative. So we are now going to write our 1/3 x minus 2 here. So now our next step, so that was our first step, and our, if you guys go back to your steps, it literally says right here, get the y by itself. Awesome. Our second step, we're going to make a table of values using strategic numbers. So we are going to pick our denominator here, which was 3, and we're going to use multiples of 3. Again, I'm just going to start off with -3, 0, and 3. Again, you can use -6, +6, -9, +9, but I'm just going to keep things simple on my end. So my first number, I'm going to plug into my equation. We have 1/3 x minus 2 is the equation I'm plugging in values. This -3 is going to be my first number. So if we have y equals 1/3 times -3 minus 2, again we make this one a fraction, the one we're multiplying, and now we're going to multiply straight across. So we have 1 times -3, which is -3, 3 times 1, which is 3, and we're going to subtract 2. So we have y equals -3 divided by 3 is -1, minus 2, and we're left with y equals -3. So that's going to be our value here. Okay, we don't have to put values in here, you guys, since you're now showing your work here, but that's totally up to you guys if like on doing that. So I like putting it in here because then I know that I completed it. So I'm just going to put 1/3 times -3 minus 2. My next one's going to be 1/3 times 0 minus 2, and then 1/3 times 3 minus 2. So if you guys are not showing this work, you have to be writing this then. So then 1/3 times 0 now. Now we are on to 1/3 times 0 minus 2. Well, 1/3 times 0 is 0. We're going to subtract 2 from that, and we get y equals a -2. So -2 is here. And then my last point that we have is y equals 1/3 times +3, and then minus 2. So don't forget to subtract the 2 at the end, you guys. Again, make this a fraction. 3 times 3, or 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 1 is 3. Minus 2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And so 1 minus 2 is going to be leaving us with a y equals -1. Okay. So if you guys, now we're going to plot our points. We're taking again the x values and the y values, making it -3, -3. And then this one we have 0, -2. And this one we had 3, -1. So now I'm going to go ahead and plot those points on my graph. And we are going to see that I have a point at -3, so 1, 2, 3 to the left, and then down 1, 2, 3. And then we have a point at 0, and then -2, so we start at the origin and go down to 2. And then to the right, 1, 2, 3 on the x-axis, and then down 1. If your points are not making a line, when you do this and you went through algebraically, then you did something wrong in your algebra. Alright, you guys, so that is how to graph our linear equations using a table, and that was part 2, a little bit tougher equations. I will see you guys in class. Thanks.